50 days ago, I finished my review, my initial impressions of the Saints Row reboot, and a lot has changed since then. So today I want to kind of talk about how this past 50 days since my initial impressions video was uploaded. Obviously, it went public the next day when the embargo ended, but I had it finished for the 26th. So I want to just talk about how my last 50 days have been since that video, and kind of just discuss Saints Row as a whole. So, my opinion has shifted quite a lot, obviously. I don't feel the same as I did 50 days ago because, quite frankly, I think people know this, but I was very hyped for the reboot and I had a lot of hype kind of surrounding me as I played through it for that first time. And I will say, and I'm not proud to admit it, but I'll be honest, probably a bit of my hype did cloud my initial judgment. Obviously, watching my initial impressions video now, you can see that I was just excited to talk about the game, excited to kind of discuss everything, and because it was initial impressions, I didn't really have enough time to kind of properly collect my thoughts. Now that 50 days have gone past and I've got 8 days, 11 hours of game time, work that out if you want, I've put a decent amount of hours into it. I can kind of talk about how I'm feeling about the game as time has gone past. So, again, a lot of hype has really gone away from this game for me now, and as I've been able to look at it more objectively, it's not the same as I saw it back then. It's kind of setting on me that some elements that I perhaps perceived as better aren't really better. So the story, obviously, if you watch my story review, I disagree with what I say in my initial impressions in that video, which came out only like a week or two later. The story was significantly weaker than I first thought, and when I finally sat down and really looked at the plot, I realized I was just like, this is so trimmed down. This has just been, it just felt like cut content was there everywhere in every single mission, and then it needed double the length. So obviously my opinion on the story has shifted a lot, and I would say it's probably the worst story we've had in Saints Row history. Even Get Out of Hell, as bad as that story is, the enemy was fleshed out. You knew who you were trying to go against, and it was a very simple plot that made sense. The reboot doesn't even do that, and even Agents of Mayhem, for fuck's sake, had a plot that kind of made sense. So, quite frankly, this game, its story is the biggest letdown, and it doesn't mean that there's no fun moments in it. I had a lot of fun playing through it, I just didn't have a lot of fun trying to get into its story. I kind of went in for it recently as I replayed it for, just kind of keeping it fresh in my mind's sake. I replayed it and I went with a fuck it doesn't really matter that much attitude, try and have fun. And I did enjoy the story. It was a good way to kill some time and have a great time doing it. But obviously it's not quite, it's not good. It's not a good story. It's a fun one, but not a good one, and I think that's really a good way to describe the game as a whole. So, if everyone's kind of wondering what my score of the reboot is, how I feel about it currently, at its current state, on the 15th of October, when I'm recording this, hopefully I'll be able to get it up the same day, fingers crossed, I'm giving it a 6.5 to a 7 out of 10. And that really comes down to a few things. I know a lot of people are going to go, that's way too high, but quite frankly, the map is a huge bonus for me. I love the map, and I still adore driving through it. The driving's really enjoyable, and I don't mind the combat system too much. So, those three things that people are kind of iffy on, I'm quite okay with, and that's probably why it's ranked so high, and there's definitely some issues. So again, looking past that, and looking past my initial impressions video, a lot of the streets are very barren, and I did talk about this slightly back then, but yeah, the streets are quite empty, and it was something I did notice, and you kind of feel like you are driving around a bit of a shell of a city. It's a beautiful shell, and it's very fun to drive around regardless and play in. It's a good sandbox, but the sandbox needs a few people in it to kind of spruce it up and make it more fun, and that's not really something I gave attention to in my initial impressions. By the way, I'm recording this with no script because I don't have much time or even points, so just kind of bear with me, it's a bit all over the place. I've been very rushed recently with these videos, so I'm trying to get one out for you. But basically, I just feel like as time has gone on, I've found less reasons to hop back on to Saints Row, even opposed to how I did with the previous games. And I don't know if that's just the hype has gone away and it's set in that okay, well, it's just another game now, I've played it, there's no need to freak out about it. Or that's just because this game doesn't have enough ways to draw me back, and it could be a bit of both. But I feel like it definitely needs a bit more content added to it, and the issue is when it has a bad story, even worse than Saints Row the Third or Get Out of Hells, there is really no reason to hop back on Saints Row. At least with the other games, I could kind of follow along a very basic story, as mind-fucking as the plot is in all of these games, where you go from 1, really gangster, 2, a bit less gangster but really fucking cool, 3, what the fuck is going on, and 4, we're in space. I kind of knew what was happening at all times, no matter how much it didn't make sense to be at these points. With the reboot, I don't really care about it, and that's kind of sad. So I think the story definitely needs some work, and this is why I'm kind of hoping the DLC slash expansions really add to it. It's something I think they need to take their time with, and kind of get ahead of it. I still think the city is beautiful though. I still think driving is really fun. Combat is still really good, and you know, I don't hate the game, and that's one thing I want to throw out there. Although I've kind of shit on the story a bit, I don't hate the game as much as people do. I still actually really enjoy it, and co-op is an absolute blast. The Hitman activity is an absolute blast, and there is a lot of fun to be had in Saints Row. But I think that with my initial impressions video, I didn't really give enough time to talk into how bad the story was. But now that days have gone past, I'm kind of just at the point where I'm looking for reasons to hop back on, and I'm not finding too many. So that's kind of where I'm at currently. The game's great. I've sunk again like 8 days, 11 hours, so I don't know how many hours as a whole that is, but it's probably over like 150, I imagine, way over. So, you know, I've put a decent amount of time into it, and I've definitely got my money's worth, so to speak. The question is, how much more worth am I going to get out of this game? Am I going to be drawn back into it with the DLCs? I certainly hope so. But yeah, the game is still, in my mind, a decent Saints Row. It's not awful. I'd put it above Saints Row 3 and Get Out of Hell as a whole. Maybe not story-wise, but as a whole, I'd put it above those, and I'd kind of put it on par with Saints Row 4 for the whole, like, you know, fun factor. I think a lot of things were done better in other games, but this game still does some of those things okay, and I just don't think it's the mess people make it out to be. I still haven't experienced too many bugs, and I'm just going to be real with you, that's a very lucky thing. I've seen a lot of people have, and I've seen these bugs, so I'm quite lucky in that behalf. But yeah, the game right now, I like it. I like where it's at. It's a decent game. I'm looking forward to the November update. I'm looking forward to the expansion passes and DLC, and I am excited to see what Saints Row has to hold. We're just kind of at the waiting phase, but now 50 days past my initial impressions, I still like Saints Row. I still think it's pretty good, and I am still really excited to see what Volition has to offer in DLC and expansions. So anyway, yeah, that's my current thoughts on Saints Row. So yeah, see you in the next one, guys. Bye.